Oh boy, it's time for another episode of The Prize. A special spooktacular Halloween edition of The Prize. My name is Danny Sigelman. Thanks for checking out the second edition of the podcast. This time featuring my guests, filmmakers Tyler Jensen and Roman Chimienti. And they're going to be talking about their film, an amazing documentary called Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, which is traveling the country right now in film festivals. Will be part of the Twin Cities Film Festival this week, telling the story of actor Mark Patton and his role in the film Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, and the subsequent path his life has taken in what is known as one of the gayest horror films of all time. So we'll be talking to Tyler and Roman about that. Very excited for them. Hey, big ups to Adam DeGrosse, who we had on our first episode here. Check that one out if you haven't already. Adam is a photographer for rapper Post Malone. Currently on the road with him, and I got to see Posty live in the flesh and Adam in action recently at the Xcel Energy Center for a really fun night. Twin Cities have been on fire. Minneapolis and St. Paul really represented the recent Trump rally protest in downtown Minneapolis. And shout out to First Avenue for injecting a little bit of positivity in the community and in the means of and dealing with the contrast that an event like that can create, and providing a safe space for people, and also dedicating their 100% of their profits at the club and the restaurant, the Depot, that day to Planned Parenthood. So if you were there and represented, I think you witnessed a lot of positivity, more so than what was ultimately represented in media, and it's mostly just a lot of community and combating a lot of the negative energy that's created by this man visiting a town like Minneapolis. So shout out to First Avenue. Hey, we got a new Twitter account for The Prize. Yeah, we're moving on up here. The Prize MPLS on Twitter is where you can follow what is coming for the podcast, and myself on Twitter as well. Paper Sleeves on Instagram and Twitter. Danny Sigelman bringing you another fun interview here. I had a great time talking to these two and excited for them and what's going to come about of their film Scream Queen. So we're going to turn it over right now to Tyler Jensen and Roman Chimienti. Hopefully you enjoy this interview and make some effort to check out Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, as the film continues to travel the country and someday, hopefully very soon, becomes more available on all your online services. It's a really fascinating view of the phenomena that is Mark Patton and the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 film. Well, cool. Congratulations, guys. I really love the movie.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's really cool to talk to you, especially Tyler, since we have a little history. I was trying to remember when we met previously. Was that a few years ago now?
It was. I do distinctly remember this. You had an art studio across the street from my house at the time, and I think you had a garage sale.
Uh-huh.
And I came to browse your wares, and of course, being a snoopy person like I am, I sifted through a box that you weren't actually selling.
What did you want? I might not want it anymore now.
No, but it was a copy of Cinema Paradiso on DVD.
Ah.
And you're like, actually, that's not for sale, but sure, you can have it.
Oh, so, cool. I did give it to you then. See how nice I am?
You're very nice. You're very nice.
Yeah. But just to give Roman a little background, we eventually worked on that amazing L'Assassins project together.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
You were in the front of Sniffer's Row, if I'm not mistaken.
What does that mean?
well, it's really cool. I think it can give people a little insight to Tyler's background and maybe obsession with horror movies. It's kind of a slasher film project. Music video for a band that's now really, unfortunately, now defunct, L'Assassins. Maybe Roman's never seen those, but those are really great.
No, I've seen it. I just want to know what that means, the sniffer front row.
Well, I was I was in the front row of the strip club that the scene took place in. Yeah. Okay. And I suffered at the hands of the lead singer.
Okay. No, I just feel we should all be very transparent here.
Yes, absolutely.
But that was not a thing that I was familiar with until I went to my friend's bachelor party at the 22nd Avenue station, and I was told of what that term means, and it was baffling to me.
You know, that strip club is now like a Thai restaurant, and they kept one of the poles in there. Which...
Nothing sounds more appetizing.
Yeah. Every now and then I'll get a Facebook reminder of those ladies in the big fight scene with all the broken glass and everything. That was really cool.
That might have been like my favorite day on set of my entire life. We threw like a Roadhouse bar fight in the last 20 minutes of our allotted time in this bar. And I just remember, like, we only have 20 minutes. We have to get all of our shots in. I gave everybody a breakaway glass bottle, and they just went fucking crazy. And we got all the shots. We cleaned up everything in less than 20 minutes. It was like that scene in Weird Science when all the furniture is flying back in the house, and it's just like, how are they going to get it done? They managed to do it. And I love everyone, and the movie came out super great. So
it was really yeah, it was really fun, and I really miss that band, and I've prodded them to reunite someday, and maybe you could get involved again, or with something else involving those musicians. So you lived here for a minute then.
Yes, I am a Minneapolis native. I do have to give a shout out to Sasha Lanskov and my friend Jack McTeague and Justin, who were on that shoot with you as well, to make all that crazy stuff happen. So
that was maybe what, 3 or 4 years ago?
I think maybe 5. I don't think because I started Scream Queen right after that. So
yeah, and that's kind of what I remember. By we kind of made friends and keeping an eye on each other online. I saw that you'd started this project, and I remember the Kickstarter with it. At what point did you and Roman cross paths then and spearhead this? And Roman, if you want to give a little bit of your background working in film, or you're more of a sound director.
I'm a sound engineer full time.
Mm-hmm.
I started Scream Queen because I was basically just like working nonstop, doing tons of film, and I kind of felt like I wanted to be involved in a project that I had a passionate meaning with, and I didn't know what that was. I just was like, oh, all these other people's projects are great, but like I got something to say, so I just
in your best Jerry Blank voice.
In my best so I didn't know what that was.
Right.
But then I through serendipity came across Mark Patton online, who I was shocked to discover I had no idea what he had been up to, having been one of my favorite actors in one of my favorite movies. So I was like, wait, why has this never crossed my mind? So we started talking instantly. I just reached out to him. I found out that he had already put the wheels in motion to sort of tell his tale, but it hadn't really been developed how they were going to do that yet.
Yeah.
And so we all just, talking and becoming friends and figuring out the best way to tell this tale just grew, but really quickly. And so I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then I met Tyler on a production job we were working on together. So we were all working. Tyler was an editor, I was a sound guy. We were working on a gay reality TV show, and we were editing together and not really talking. We hadn't met each other really. He was kind of shy, and I was really bossy and talking about my own shit. So long story short, like, we just discovered we were both horror fans. I'm telling your story, Tyler. I'm sorry.
Right. No.
What was the reality TV show called?
It was
Love is Blind.
Love is Blind. It was essentially the gay version of Blind Date, where you have people, they go on dates, and it's either wonderful or disastrous. And we were coming in to do some polish up work on it, and I was overhearing Roman talk to the producer of this project that he was going to start shooting Scream Queen. He was going to Florida to meet Mark Patton, and it was going to be about Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And the minute I heard that, my ears perked up.
Yeah.
I turned to him and I lifted up my T-shirt sleeve to show him my Freddy phone tattoo. It's like a shorthand of like, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm going to be a part of it, and you can't get rid of me. So let's find a way to.
But the reason that we've told this story a lot, but the reason why it's important is because that's sort of the way all of this has gone. You know, it's not like I have a lot of contacts in the industry. I've worked with a lot of people, but I didn't sign contracts. I didn't make people like audition for shit or anything like that. Just like, oh, I have a good sense about you. And Tyler really like exuded what it would take to be part of this madness. And it just, it went from 0 to 60 right away.
Yeah.
Right.
He kind of got it right away.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just called him after. I'm like, so you want to help me shoot it? Cool.
Right. No, I think at first I offered to edit it. I'm like, I don't care what this is, but if you need an editor, here I am. And then I kind of conned my way into bringing me out on to Florida to shoot with you guys.
Yeah.
To help shoot it. Like, I'll edit your movie if you let me shoot it. I want to meet Freddy Krueger. I want to meet Mark Patton.
Yeah.
And then I got there and I was just like, oh my God, this story is so much bigger than what I initially thought. And it, like, my whole brain was firing on all cylinders, and I knew that this was going to be something really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I keeping track of Tyler, seeing that he was involved with the project and kind of what it was, I got really excited because I was such a fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street series and completely oblivious. I mean, I was 11 when it came out, so the undertones that your movie is about, I never even had thought of, and I hadn't seen the movie probably since around that time. So I watched it again with some friends, now in today's context, and it just blew us away. And then to know that there's this whole backstory since then about Mark was really intriguing, and I was really excited to finally see the film and kind of understand a little more about what his story, what his evolution and what he's done since then. I thought it was really interesting. So this is something Mark has kind of spearheaded. Another film I didn't know about was that Never Sleep Again documentary. And obviously this is kind of fleshing out more of his story than might be in that documentary, which I've never seen.
Yeah, that documentary is fantastic if you love Elm Street.
Yeah.
It's not really, it doesn't really tell you Mark's story at all.
Yeah.
It just sort of brought him back, and it reintroduced him to the horror world. So it allowed him to come out and be invited to festivals and meet fans, and that. So around this time is, a little while soon after is when I met Tyler, and that whole like him showing me a tattoo thing and me saying, hey, come on the road. That's because it was still new, the concept of being a gay person who loves horror and is out and proud about it. That wasn't even 5 years ago a very common thing. So that's why I was so happy to meet Tyler. And that's also why Mark instantly was like, the fans that were kind of closeted at these things were like latching onto him. And it just happened so quickly. I think there's a lot of people that were looking for their idol to come and stand up for him, so it was perfect timing with all of this.
Yeah. And it's interesting, all the different perspectives that people have for their appreciation of the genre. But I'm always really interested in like pop culture phenomenons that take on lives of their own, that are outside of maybe their intended purpose. And
absolutely,
and that's certainly a lot more common now that everybody has access to everything. But like I said, I mean, thinking back as when I was a teenager watching that film, I didn't think of it as something that was gay. I just thought it was something that everything I was watching, I just thought, well, that's what kids are like in high school. They're naked all the time. They're dancing on their bed or whatever. and now to have a
I know
different
I certainly was.
I really was, but yeah.
Well, you know what I mean. I mean, to look at it now, it's like, well, yeah, of course that was what was happening. But man, there's so many aspects of this. I'm thinking about because when I watch the director whose name I'm forgetting, but then also David Chaskin. When I kind of watch how they now think of that film, it's almost just like, well, that was just like a day job back then. They haven't really inherited much from their work on the film, the way Mark has.
Yeah.
And in a way, I feel like there is a little reality TV bent to it, especially in the last third of the movie, in kind of the meetings and especially the reunion. They seem kind of flippant about how it's really affected Mark all this time.
Well, okay, so Jack Shoulder is the director.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot to that question, but
yeah, sorry.
Working backwards real
Yeah.
quickly, I just think so, to be fair, we were capturing everybody in the moment. We didn't prep anybody for what was going to happen, so it really was a real reality TV.
Yeah, and I think he did that really well.
So, take it for what it is. It's people being introduced on camera to these situations and responding to it. And I do think that everybody was a good sport in being a part of this story, regardless of what their initial reaction was. However, David Chaskin and Jack Shoulder made this movie. I can't tell you what it meant for them at the time, but I can say that from reading a lot about early 80s slasher productions, Friday the 13th, a lot of these things weren't taken seriously at the time.
No.
So I don't think they were making it with this intent that it was going to be like they were going to be accepting awards on stages. They were just happy to be working and doing something they loved.
Yeah.
So that's me standing up for them a little bit.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't think they just haven't the contrast of how Mark has really internalized and had to deal with this his whole life, I think is really interesting. And I think that tension is there when they first meet again.
Well, Tyler is really perceptive to all that stuff because while I'm asking questions and holding a boom pole and making sure batteries aren't running out and all that kind of stuff, he's holding the camera and he's watching people's nerves react. And he's really capturing Mark's responses to these things as they're happening. So, it's Tyler, you probably witnessed a lot of stuff on hand that you're like, oh shit, I didn't know this was going to happen. Right.
Right. No, definitely that scene, that face-to-face with David Chaskin was really tense. We got David invited us to his house, and we knew that we wanted to interview him solo first to get his full. Because if we came in like guns a-blazing, it would have been kind of a tense moment. So we started off with him softly, and Mark was waiting in the car, and I knew that I wanted to get their first meeting on camera, as it happened. So you kind of feel that tension, but while we were interviewing David first, there was this huge hailstorm. So we had to stop recording, and now this hour-and-a-half interview is suddenly 3 hours in the middle of the winter, and Mark is waiting in a car just freezing his ass off.
Oh, no.
So by the time, they actually he gets out of the car to come meet him, it's been 4 hours, and Mark has been just kind of stewing in this, what's going to happen kind of mode. And preparing for this conversation. And so you can kind of feel that tension as he gets out of the car, he walks, and they meet for the first time. And the conversation is very, very tense. You can see it in the way that Mark moves his eyebrows.
Oh my God, yeah.
Tells you everything you need to know about being in that room. And the moment that he really confronts him about his beef with David, the tape ran out. So really? he made this statement, and before David could respond, we had to stop for 3 minutes, change tape. Nobody said anything.
They're just staring at each other like no one can speak. So we're like, oh God, this is right where everything has to break. Cool.
Right. I mean, if I could have included that moment in the film, I would have. Like, that was the real kind of like tense moment of like, but I think it also allowed for what ultimately that scene became. It's
Yeah.
like you're no longer reacting in the moment. You're given this moment to pause and reflect about what this moment in time is supposed to be about, and you can kind of measure it as a changing point for Mark, where he shifts his focus from this one particular person into the bigger picture.
You are listening to the Prize Podcast. Hope you're enjoying this interview with filmmakers Tyler Jensen and Roman Chimienti, discussing their excellent documentary, Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. Follow the Prize Podcast on Twitter at The Prize MPLS on Twitter. Also, your host, Danny Sigelman, on Twitter, Paper Sleeves, and also on Instagram's Paper Sleeves. And here's a little opportunity to promote your local business here in the Twin Cities or around the world. Or whatever interplanetary business you represent by supporting the prize here. Feel free to reach out and let me know what you have going on. We'd love to promote your brand as well. And now back to our interview with filmmakers Tyler Jensen and Roman Chimienti discussing their film, Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. I think this film is about Mark's transformation and ultimately the ability to find the joy in his life after all, and just how effective he's been. How was it following him around, like the conventions and meeting people? I mean, one scene that really I found pretty interesting, there's a kid in the audience asking a question, and he says something like, how was it being so gay on camera, man? Like being yourself, man. That must be. And I think that's the real contrast between generations. Certainly in the gay community, and being out now is really different from how it was then.
Right. I think that interaction right there is what the movie is about for me. Like, I'm a generation behind Mark, and I'm benefiting from the struggles that him and his peers went through during that time period. So for me, this is a lot of it's a history lesson for myself as well. And I had the same thoughts as that kid, and it wasn't until following Mark for the last 4 years that I've gotten a greater understanding of what actually was sacrificed in order for us to have this moment. And how fragile this moment actually is, and it could all go away in an instant, especially in our current political climate.
I was just like, kind of, to be perfectly honest, going to conventions for the first time, I was like, what the hell, this is crazy. Because that was my first horror convention, was our first day filming. And I'm a huge horror fan. I just had never delved into that world. It didn't seem like that world was for me until I soon realized there's tons of gay people that are in this. So
you're like, these are my people.
Right? They're there. But like, going back to what you said about David and Jack sort of being a little maybe dismissive or flippant about it, I think that it's important to understand that it's only because they never had to see that there was another perspective here.
Exactly.
So to them, it's like, I don't think they were trying to be mean. They just like, I just don't understand what the big deal is. And then Mark comes in and says, well, let me explain to you what the big deal is. And so that's where the rise of the gay culture in the horror circuit is important, because like, horror movies directly they symbolize the struggles that a lot of people go through, not just gay people, women for sure. but it's all there. And I think now that it's not just being like, we're not just placating the straight male audience, it's actually enriching the whole horror experience for those that let it. You know, there's cooler movies coming out.
Yeah, it's also interesting for a large portion of the population. Like, horror movies were their first introduction to queer people and queer stories.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's, you know, the monster is always coded as queer in a lot of these classic movies. Like, obviously Norman Bates, obviously De Palma films like Dressed to Kill. It's like it's using the fear of the homosexual in order, but that is sometimes the only introduction people have. So if you're growing up in a culture where gay people are always the murderer or always some deranged psycho killer, it's like it sucks as if you're a gay kid and you're watching that. Like, so that's kind of where queer spectatorship comes in, where they latch on to these characters in these films and kind of disregard the comeuppance in the end. So they can only have this one or two scenes where the gay character gets to live free and be gay, and hopefully they don't have to get murdered in the end.
Yeah, and you do a really good job of in a short period of time in the film, kind of illustrating that whole progression, and even just with cutting in a lot of the scenes and characters from all those films. I guess from a technical standpoint, how do you get access to all this, you know, copyrighted work, any, you know, that kind of material to tell these stories? I mean, is it all? I mean, this is a pretty big production. It's pretty legit, right?
Yeah, you have to, I mean, without getting too specific about it. Yeah. Like, you basically have to have lawyers that guide you on the proper way to use things so that it's within the rules of usage. Yeah. And that's very specific. So it's like, and that was a challenge for us because we wanted to make a movie that, I mean, we could make a straight up informative documentary that would, you know, easily flow legally, but we also wanted it to be interesting, and we didn't want to just, like, you know, wag our finger at people with all these points, you know. So then the creative aspect comes in, and that's where Tyler and I had to get really crafty with our own B-roll and art, cool stuff.
Yeah, so, I love that. And the you know, Freddy's Revenge itself, obviously you're using a ton of that. Is there a process in kind of like getting the blessing of the original producers or whoever owns that film?
The process is having lawyers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like no, you just have to follow the rules. What do they call it?
Fair use?
Well, yeah, the process of fair use is an intricate process. So no, if the way that we used it was signed off on and okay, but it's down to the millisecond. Right. Certain context with certain sound, all of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm coming at it from thinking I love movies that are about movies, and then especially if it's a documentary like this, and the story is still kind of evolving. I mean, how excited was the rest of the cast to be involved in this, or excited for Mark to kind of have his moment to shine? Was there an element of that you kind of observed with the other actors, maybe, or you know, the producer?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I've mentioned this a lot on the road, actually. That was one of the things that made me the happiest. Was, like I said, we bum rushed everybody and said, "Hey, we want to interview you about this," and they thought we were going to talk about Freddy Krueger, and they were like, "Let's talk about AIDS," you know. So
yeah, everyone's favorite topic.
Yeah, and they're like, "Whoa, okay." So they were taken aback, but everyone was so thrilled to speak to us.
Yeah,
which is a very telling. It's an indicator of how they feel about Mark. It's an indicator of how they feel about being, like, as a group, the Elm Street actors, Kim Myers, Robert Rustler, Robert Englund, all of them, Marshall Bell, Clu Gallagher, they all gave us, like, you know, we thought they'll give us 10 minutes. Nobody sat for less than half an hour. Like, they spent so much time, and a lot of them have come on the road with us just to support Mark. Kim and Robert Rustler have been with us in numerous places.
Yeah.
and they love talking about it and giving him his time to shine because he's telling his story. But they are wonderful people, and I didn't think it would come to this, but I'm so glad that they're here with us.
Yeah, I would imagine they can kind of relate. Robert Englund obviously has had a lot of contact with Mark through the years, it sounded like. Maybe on the convention circuit.
Yeah. That's really how all of them it wasn't really beyond that until recently.
Sure. Oh, and since your film has come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's that been like for Mark? I mean, what do you see? Like, can you anticipate? Getting to the end of the film and watching it throughout, I just thought, man, this guy should make he should be in a movie. He could be, if they made another Nightmare on Elm Street, how cool would it be? I mean, the whole story is there. Do you see him? I mean, has he acted recently?
Yes. Tyler, what was he just in? He's in a few things.
Oh my God! No, he makes a bunch of movies every year.
Yeah.
He's hasn't slowed down.
Okay.
At all.
Oh wow!
I do think that he is. So the one thing that I think we have to remember is we just finished the movie.
Yeah.
And he was going through this in real time and having these confrontations. He's healed. A lot of things have healed, but the process is still a little ongoing. It takes a while to like sort out what this means and where you're going. And so it's I give him so much credit for letting the cameras just sit on him and follow him while this is happening. Because he could have easily have just like, it could have been an afterthought. He could have said, listen, I had this beef. I talked to these people. Let's go back and like rehash it so we can make some money. Instead, he allowed himself to be vulnerable.
Super vulnerable.
Very. And that's going to, it's a healing process. So where he's going from here, I'm not sure. But every time we get together and go on the road, we take more steps forward. So I think he really enjoys speaking to people, being invited to speak to people about his experience, but also beyond that, people really like listening to him. So he's going to be invited to a lot of places.
Yeah, that's so cool. Do you have any idea what he thinks of the finished product?
Oh, of course. Yeah. No, I mean, he never once asked us to make a single change.
Yeah.
A single thing, not even for vanity purposes, nothing. He was very content. He felt like this was the story we wanted to tell. And right, Tyler?
Right. He gave us so much. In fact, he asked for one change, and that's for the very last shot of the film. There's a montage of all the boys who come up to him on tour to like meet with him, get his autograph, to tell them their own personal stories. Yeah. And he wanted us to end on the boy that looks just like him.
Oh, okay.
So that was his only critique. He's like, I love what you're doing, but end with this one because he looks just like me.
He's not. Is he coming with you to Minneapolis or no?
He is. Yes.
Oh, he is. Yes. Holy shit!
We're trying to get the word out. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's cool. I thought it was maybe just you two.
Yeah, it's the three of us, and we'll do a Q&A afterwards, and he'll have some. We have some really fantastic soundtrack LPs that we're.
Oh, I know. Yeah, you got to save me one of those.
Yeah. We'll have those available, and we're gonna give. Like, the movie will be great itself, but the best part of this whole experience is doing the Q&A with Mark and letting him tell his story even further to people in the audience. It makes a great situation even better.
Yeah. Well, I got my tickets, so I'm definitely going to be there. I'm wearing my Scream Queen T-shirt right now. Actually,
thank you.
The original one from the Kickstarter. I don't remember who's the artist it's the one. Freddy holding the teddy bear. That's
the Wizard Skull.
Yeah.
He's getting a second life of notoriety right now because people in China have ripped off his sexy Ronald McDonald image. With French fries coming out of his bikini bottoms.
Oh, nice.
So if you can all support Wizard Skull, that would be real great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wear this. The shirt is kind of faded. I've had it a few years now. and people ask me about it all the time, and it gives me an opportunity for people for me to tell people about the movie, and it's like, oh, you got to see this film when it comes out, and
Thank you.
and the whole history.
That was actually my so we did a Kickstarter,
Yeah.
and Roman and I aren't necessarily super confident at talking to a large group of people on the street at random to beg them for money. And I found that for me, like I couldn't approach people who didn't want to hear about the movie, but I could wear a Freddy Krueger t-shirt, and if anyone's like, "Oh, I like your shirt," and I'm like, "Well, that's funny you say that because I'm making a movie about it, and give me $10." So that's a little tidbit of what do they call that? A life hack for anyone who's also making their own movie and trying to figure out a way to beg for money that is not totally pitiful. It's like
And so now that this film is being seen, what are your guys' feelings about how it's being received, and where does it go after doing a circuit like you're doing now? Does it go to Netflix or DVD? Like, how, in this day and age, how does a film kind of hold its life, or is that kind of like a mystery question?
Reception has been by far and large like one of the most like heartwarming or just validating experiences of my life. You work 4 or 5 years on this project, not sure if anyone's going to care as much as you do about it, and then to see people come up to us after every show, come up to Mark and like have them tell their own stories because Mark told his and it made them comfortable telling theirs. We've had, the horror fans come and they love it. We've had, women over the age of 50 and 60 who have never seen a horror movie in their life. Yet something about Mark's story was compelling to them, and they come and they cry and tell stories of their friends and their friends' kids who have died. And then you have the HIV and AIDS survivors who come up to Mark at the end of the show and be like, "You got it right. That's exactly what it felt like to live in those times." And all of that. And then even the younger kids who are becoming HIV positive, who are watching the film, like, "Thank you so much for telling people that undetectable means untransmissible," because there's a lot of stigma still happening in culture today. And all of this has been wonderful, and it validated us making this film.
Yeah.
So can I say, like, with what going forward, what we have to do? So I think there's a lot of confusion with the process of making an independent movie like this. People think like, oh, just give me a DVD and put it on Netflix and do all that stuff.
I know.
That's a very buttoned up procedure, and the whole point, we're in these festivals, we want people to see us, and we want to meet new people, and we want to find the right home for it. Because we want everyone everywhere to get a DVD, stream it, watch it, all that stuff. But we have to make those deals first, and it has to be right, because it's not like we shake hands and they send discs across the globe. There's a million territories and different paperwork and like all these different things. So right now we're just we're just showing it in these festivals, getting it out there, letting people see what they think of it, and it's snowballing fast. So
that's great.
I can't tell you what the next step is yet.
Sure.
We've been on the road for weeks and weeks. We just got back like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So I think I'm caught up with sleep. Not really.
You will never be caught up with sleep.
Never. And we're leaving again
Literally,
in 6 days.
This
so
is
we'll
a
be
funny
gone.
anecdote. Roman and I have been editing this movie like nonstop for 4 years.
Yeah.
And we started showing this film in March to festivals and kind of like road testing it a little bit. Every festival we'd go, we'd play, we'd see how the audience reacted, and we would make tiny tweaks. We had our official US premiere at Fantastic Fest in Austin, Texas last month. And to prepare that, like after all this road testing, we like stayed up for, I think, 2 weeks straight, re-editing, getting everything clear and perfect. And we were literally like turning ourselves into Elm Street kids, like unable to sleep, terrified of this monster. And Yeah, that was a fun moment. But
Yeah.
we haven't recovered since then. That's
Oh no. And so you'll be on the road again for how long? Just the rest of the year, or?
Yeah,
I think
off and
easily.
on.
We've got shows overseas booked through March of next year, and then we have some college tours, some college speaking things happening next spring.
Mhm.
We're going to Twin Cities Film Festival on the 23rd, and then Milwaukee Film Festival the day after. And then we have a New York premiere, and then we start traveling overseas after that.
Oh man, that's awesome! No, I'm super stoked for you. And I mean, like you said, I think that I think this movie can reach so many different, different kinds of fans, and people in the gay community, who maybe aren't horror fans, but can see very clearly somebody going through what they did and coming out of it the way Mark has. So. Anything else then? I mean, this is kind of your moment. I mean, how do people find you online? I guess the film it has a website and it's on Facebook. But for yourselves, do you guys have social media?
Yeah. So definitely we're both on social media. I think most people reach out to us through Scream Queen on Facebook, but it all routes together. I mean,
yeah, of course.
Me and Tyler and Mark are essentially married into this like thing where you can get all of us easily.
Yeah.
I think that the
three for the price of one.
Three for the price of one. The Instagram and Facebook is where like everyone is really. I am kind of confused though that like we post all the time and we've got a pretty crazy schedule, and then we'll leave like Boston and people will be like, when are you coming to Boston? And we're like, I don't know how else to get the word out, but
yeah,
we're all over, man. So yeah, please, if people want to sign up on our website, screamqueendocumentary.com, then they can get updates for where we will be, which might help people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've got tons and tons and tons of on the road stuff that's up there. It's fun and people are loving it. And
yeah.
And
they can find you two individually through those means as well, or in person at these events, of course.
Yeah. Tyler, Jensen, and Roman Chimienti we won't bite your head off if you write to us. I might. So you might, say something nice first. Say something.
Some might be hoping for that. And then, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but any projects you guys have coming in the future, or their dreams or different ideas?
Oh God, yeah.
Plenty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, of course everybody's like, make another documentary, which we have some things.
Mm-hmm.
But then wouldn't it be great if we could actually take this new conversation about like having a more queer angle in horror and actually just doing it without it having to be subtext,
right?
And not having it be some niche thing. Like we've got some things happening.
Yeah,
picture maybe Don Wiener on Elm Street.
Well, like you just said, I think to see Mark doing something like that now without the subtext and actually appealing to people that are out and want to see that, I think it would be really cool.
He has a whole story about that he likes to tell in his Q&As, so you should come and see that. And
Absolutely.
Ask him about that. He's got it down to a science what he thinks he wants to do with it. So
yeah,
come and listen.
So is there going to be dancing at the event?
You better believe it.
Awesome.
Dancing and screaming.
I think that's how Tyler.
All kinds of fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. So has Roman ever been to Twin Cities?
I don't think so.
I've never been. No,
I'm gonna show him all my old haunts. Yeah, it's gonna be a wild weekend.
I'm gonna bond with your friends, and I'm gonna learn all sorts of things I can make fun of you about later.
You're gonna meet my parents, and it's all gonna make sense.
Yeah. Awesome. I had a great time talking to Tyler and Roman. They're recently completed film, Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. Do seek it out. It's a really great film and document of Mark's career. Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. Thanks for hanging out with us. Do find us online at The Prize, MPLS, on Twitter. Also, Paper Sleeves on Twitter and Instagram. And stay tuned. Stay connected to what we have coming up here. Thanks for hanging out.